Welcome to Stuff Mom Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. And y'all, I am back, but alas, I am Anney-less today as the podcast gods have decided to throw us another curveball and have Anney do her civic duty as a juror of what I would assume will be an intense and perhaps material-filled trial for her to report back to us. Yes, as I will say, I am getting like some text here and there, and though I'm not getting any super juicy details, it's obvious I think she misses us, just so you know. But until then, we are going to keep trucking, and we may be bringing some fun guests along the way. She should be returning by the following week. And just in case you were trying to figure it out, yes, I am recording on October 8th, 2024 for today's Feminist Around the World. Y'all, again, Anney will return after she has completed her task of serving the state of Georgia. And we wish her well and hope that she is doing okay mentally and physically, because we know this could be taxing, but you know. Send her some well wishes, y'all. But for today, I am talking about an amazing woman who has been officially working to advocate for her community as well as for us. And we are talking about Indigenous Ecuadorian activist Helena Gualinga. So this young activist is already a pro when it comes to advocacy and activism. And she comes from an amazing family of activists who've been influencing her and supporting her all the way. Her mother, Noemi Gualinga, is the former president of the indigenous group Quechua Women's Association in Ecuador. Her sister, Nina, is also a pretty popular and well-known environmental indigenous activist. And her aunt and her grandmother, Patricia and Christina, are well-known within the women's and environmental rights activism in the Amazons themselves. So she has been watching from a very young age as her family fought against and was even persecuted and targeted by large corporations, oil corporations, and even the government, and has watched as activists in their community get hurt or killed due to the violent conflicts against them. She's talked about her experience with WBUR in a 2019 article, and here's a bit from that. Quote, "What got me into environmental activism was just living and growing up in the community," she says. "I think that is activism. That's a sign of resistance. Oil companies have posed a threat to Gualinga's community for as long as she can remember," she says. "These companies often do not consult indigenous communities before entering their territory," she says. "That's what happened to Sarayaku, her home. The Ecuadorian government supported oil companies, and together they entered the indigenous territory along with military," she says. To protect their forests, she says the community had to stand up against these powers. And she's talked more about what got her started in advocacy work with Refinery 29 for their 2020 feature of her in their article titled "Climate Advocate Helena Gualinga, Climate Change is Not a Gen Z Issue." She says, "My mom is from a community called Quechua Sarayaku. Sarayaku is a very small indigenous community in the Ecuadorian Amazon. There are about 1,200 people there, and the year I was born, an oil company entered without my community's consent. So when I was growing up, I constantly saw all the things that happened to my people, to the people that said no. It was always part of my life that people were fighting for our communities. This was normal for me, that someone was trying to take our home from us. So when I grew up and I realized that I have a voice, I have a platform that I can use, English is a very good tool to have to reach a lot of people. I think I owe this to my people. That's the least I can do to help my people." And her community has been working hard to advocate for their land and for their people. In fact, in 2012, her community was able to win a court case against the Ecuadorian government, helping to establish the activists as a force to deal with. She talked to CNN in 2022 a little bit about the significance of the case. Quote, "The Sarayaku case is a symbol of resistance. Throughout my childhood, the leaders of my community, many of whom are family, were violated, facing defamation, violence, torture, and criminalization of their defiance. It sparked rage in me and my community. But when Sarayaku won, we showed the world that you can fight big oil because no political or economic force is powerful enough to exploit land when its people unite. Our victory inspired other indigenous peoples protecting their lands and sends a powerful message to the companies and banks invested in projects that violate our rights. Their time is up. And then she continues, after living in fear of losing our homes, my peers and I have followed in our elders' footsteps in defying the systems that uphold violence against people and nature. Last month, a youth gathering was held in Sarayaku where indigenous youth from across the Ecuadorian and Peruvian Amazon gathered to discuss the future of our territories and reaffirm our commitment to protect Kawasaksacha. Gualinga has been working hard in her advocacy, becoming a spokesperson for her indigenous community, speaking at the COP25 and other UN events, but she's reluctant to use the word activist for herself. She explained in that same CNN article that her activism isn't a choice, but something that has become a part of indigenous culture. And she went on to explain why she thinks advocacy for the indigenous community and for the environment go hand in hand. She says, I don't identify as an activist because I do not believe we had a choice. Where I come from, most of the Amazonian indigenous population would be considered activists. If Sarayaku did not put up a fight, our territory would have been destroyed. It's a matter of survival rather than acting out of choice. My region, Latin America, is one of the most dangerous places for indigenous people and land defenders. Our life's work has been to protect our lands. Our existence is our resistance. The mere existence of people in the Amazon is what is securing the future of the Amazon. Does that make us activists? No. It's simply part of who we are and where we come from. It's a defense mechanism of nature itself. And with that, she's talked at length about the need to have indigenous voices in conferences and talks about environmental changes and protections. She told CNN, our communities have been raising the alarm bell on the climate crisis as we see the changes to the environment firsthand. We are on the front lines of keeping fossil fuels in the ground as we work to defend our lands. As the world is moving away from fossil fuels, it's now being replaced by the green energy industry. However, the transition to a green economy must ensure that it includes indigenous people in decision-making and that it does not repeat the same colonist approach for the fossil fuels industry. However, the green energy industry is currently not adequately including indigenous people in decision-making. And she goes on to say, it's essential that the indigenous people not only have a say in climate negotiations, but the discussions are also led by indigenous people so that all climate action is guided by climate justice. Indigenous people have tended ecosystems for thousands of years. The knowledge we have obtained interacting and coexisting with nature for years is essential to understand how we will restore and find balance between humans and nature. To understand this, let's look at the numbers. Indigenous peoples comprise less than 5% of the world's population, but we protect 80% of the Earth's biodiversity in the forests, deserts, grasslands, and marine environments in which we have lived for centuries. Right. And she is making sure that she uses her platforms to continue to elevate indigenous voices, trying to be a leader for climate justice because she has to. And in 2022, she was featured in the documentary Helena Gualinga, documenting her life and activism. And also, she's very much present on her social media, using that as a platform to continue to spread her message. Ooh, yeah, she has done a lot of work. Her entire family has done so much work in order to protect their community, our community, and the world in general. She is definitely still on the forefront in the news, trying to get more awareness about what is happening, and has been a part of the UN as well as different festivals trying to spread her message. So definitely go and look her up. Woo! And with that, we miss you, Anney. Thank you to those who have stuck with me doing this alone. We've been doing these solo sessions a lot. It makes me sad because, again, I miss my Anney. But if you miss us and want to talk to us, you can email us at stuffmediamomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff Mom Never Told You. We have a book. You can find it anywhere, but you know we love a good independent bookstore. So if you happen to have purchased our book from an independent bookstore, send us some pictures. We need those pictures. And then thanks to, of course, super producer Christina, who makes me sound coherent and makes sure I am coherent, executive producer Maya, and contributor Joey. And thanks to you, whom we love and are so thankful for. Stuff Mom Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.